Week 6 of the 2022 college football season is in the books, and that means it's time to rank the top 25 teams in the nation. I'm Stephen Lassen of All CFB 365. Please be sure to subscribe and also check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at All CFB 365. As always, before we get into our rankings, we need to go through our criteria. Our rankings take into account sort of a Vegas style, best team on a neutral field, top 25. We try to respect head-to-head as much as possible. Also, throughout the season, any kind of preseason rankings, projections will be removed, especially now that we have 6 weeks of college football in the books. So there's plenty of data to determine the best 25 teams in the nation. As we look at the teams that just missed our rankings this week, we got to mention North Carolina picking up the win at Miami. The Tar Heels are now 5-1 and probably the front runner to win the ACC's Coastal Division. Purdue also tops the list of teams that just missed our rankings. The Boilermakers picked up a huge win against Maryland on Saturday. Their only losses this season are to Penn State and Syracuse, and both of those teams are in our top 25. Also, BYU just drops out of our top 25 after losing to Notre Dame. A couple of Group of 5 teams definitely deserve consideration this week, including Tulane sitting there at 5-1, also have a win over Kansas State, who we have in the top 25. James Madison and Coastal Carolina just missed our rankings this week. We begin the first set of rankings with a little bit of a surprise. We have Notre Dame at 25. I know the Fighting Irish lost to Marshall earlier this season. They also have the loss at Ohio State, but this team has played better since the second half of the California game. Notre Dame has defeated North Carolina and BYU, who we have as fringe top 25 teams at this point. So I like the way that Notre Dame has played. Basically 25 through 35, there's a handful of teams that could be ranked here. Tulane, Coastal Carolina, James Madison could all make a case here. So I've got the Fighting Irish at 25. I understand if others have another team there. Kentucky stays in our top 25. We'll give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because of not having Will Levis in the loss to South Carolina. Illinois joins the rankings. Not sure what the injury status is for Tommy DeVito after leaving the game against Iowa. However, the Fighting Illini might be the team to beat in the Big Ten West. We'll see what's in store this week when they play Minnesota. Texas jumps back into our rankings after a dominant win over Oklahoma on Saturday. Syracuse is 5-0 for the first time since 1987, and they have a huge showdown against NC State this week. The Orange check in at 20. Utah drops to 19 after losing to UCLA. Any chance that the Utes had to get back into playoff contention went out the window with the loss to UCLA, keeping Kansas in the top 25 after a 7-point loss to TCU. The health of quarterback Jalen Daniels is a big concern going forward. Kansas State knocked off Iowa State 10-9, moving up to 17 in our rankings. Also, Mississippi State checks in at 16. The Bulldogs quietly moving up this list every week. They've now scored back-to-back wins in SEC play by 18 or more points after beating Arkansas 40-17 on Saturday. The next section of teams is headlined by 2 from the ACC. NC State checks in at 15. The Wolfpack held Florida State to just 93 yards in the second half in a comeback win over the Seminoles on Saturday night. Wake Forest took care of business 45-10 over Army. TCU moves up to 13. The Horned Frogs getting the big win 38-31 at Kansas on Saturday. Oregon continues to quietly rack up wins. They've scored 41 or more points in each of its last 5 games. And Ole Miss, slow start at Vanderbilt, averaged almost 10 yards a play, and they put away the Commodores with a 52-28 victory. UCLA kicks off our top 10. The Bruins jump up to number 10 after an impressive win over Utah. The balance that UCLA's had on offense the last 2 weeks with Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Zach Charbonnet on the ground, DTR through the air, the defense has made enough timely stops. The Bruins get Oregon on October 22nd, which should be a huge showdown in the Pac-12. Penn State at number 9. The Nittany Lions were off on Saturday, but they play at Michigan coming up in in week 7. Oklahoma State quietly continues to rack up solid wins. They scored a 10-point victory over Texas Tech. Quarterback Spencer Sanders accounted for 353 of Oklahoma State's 434 total yards. USC, the defense stepped up in the second half, pitched a shutout to beat Washington State 30-14. Tennessee has reached a season high in our top 25, checking in at number 6. The Volunteers knocked off LSU 40-13 on Saturday. Just a dominant all-around performance by the Volunteers, averaged over 6 yards of play. Also, Tennessee's defense, 5 sacks. Again, underscoring a dominant performance before the Volunteers play Alabama next Saturday in Knoxville. No changes in our top 25 from the previous week. However, we have a caveat here. I think the top 3 teams in college football are close together: Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. You could make a case for any of these teams at number 1, 2, or 3. So if you have Ohio State at number 1, I will not disagree with you. I know Alabama did not play its best game against Texas A&M with the turnovers and the mistakes. However, they won a game without Bryce Young. That should count for something. We will keep Alabama at 1, but they have a massive showdown at Tennessee next Saturday. Georgia at 2, very impressive win over Auburn. That's the 6th win in a row over the Tigers. Georgia rushed for 292 yards on Saturday. We mentioned Ohio State. There's really no difference at this point between Ohio State at 3 and Alabama at 1. Georgia probably has the best win of this group, beating Oregon in the season opener. Ohio State has been consistently dominant for most of the year. There was the opener against Notre Dame that was closer than we anticipated, but CJ Stroud on Saturday continued his dominance of Michigan State. He now has 12 touchdown passes over the last 2 years against the Spartans. And as we get into 4 and 5, both Michigan and Clemson took care of business in conference play on the road. Michigan started slow, but beat Indiana 31-10. Clemson beat Boston College 31-3. I think you could make a case to flip Clemson and Michigan because Clemson has 2 top 25 wins. But I think the bigger picture here is the top 3 teams are close together and they're all vulnerable. And I think you could make a case for Michigan, Clemson, or even Tennessee. It's somewhere in the top 5. So I think what we've kind of settled into a point of college football where a lot of these teams at the top are clustered together. They're all vulnerable, which is going to make for an exciting rest of October, also in November, and for conference championships in December. The rest of the college football season, there's a lot at stake, and we could be in for some surprises if the top teams in the country appear to be this vulnerable as we go into the rest of October and November. That's our top 25 after week 6 for all CFB 365. I'm Steven Lassen. Please be sure to subscribe. Also, leave your top 25s in the comments. I would love to check those out and see how you have the top 25 teams in the nation after week 6. It should be a great week 7. Let's see how this top 25 shapes up after a big weekend of games next week.